A dash of mystery, a sparkle of magic, and all things cozy. Join your host, Elle Hartford, for Cozy Alchemy, a proud member of the Authors on the Air network. Hello and welcome to Cozy Alchemy, the podcast all about cozy, charmed books. I'm Elle, and I'm here with Lucy Jane Wood, author of Rewitched and Uncharmed. We will get to those in just a minute. I'm very excited. But first, Lucy is going to start us off with a game of two truths and a lie.
Okay, I'm feeling the pressure to make sure that I deliver these very poker-faced. Here we go. Number one, I am a Taurus. Number two, my debut novel, Rewitched, was the first book that I've ever written. And number three, I am anti-pineapple on pizza.
Nice. I feel like they are all very cozy in aspect. You know, it's all about the little things of daily life, right?
Touches of magic in the star sign, book related, and food. I mean, all my favorite things.
There you go. And on that note, I can see Taurus as being like kind of like a very grounded, cozy sign. So, but this is tough because I know
I'm glad I've got you stumped.
I know, yeah. Oh man, just thinking of like all of the books that I wrote before I even thought about publishing, like, all of the drafts stuffed under the bed. So I'm like, man, I can't. If that one is true, then that's impressive. I'm going to go with it's the lie. I'm going to assume that you like pineapple on pizza.
The lie was that I am anti-pineapple on pizza. I actually love pineapple on pizza.
And I am too, which is why that was a tough one. That was really tough. But
Oh,
that
good.
means
I'm
that
glad.
Rewitched is the first book that you ever wrote.
It was, yeah. It was the first book that I've fully seen through to completion. I've had, I've dabbled here and there with little ideas, but that was the first one that I completely saw through from beginning to end. And it ended up being my first published book.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so special.
Yeah.
And we'll probably end up circling back around to that. But we are especially here to talk about your book, Uncharmed, because that's the recent release, right?
Yeah, it's actually publication day today that we're recording this, so
That's
it's
right.
perfect timing.
I was trying to check my calendar. Yeah, yay, congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's a funny, like, publishing days is such a funny feeling because they are this huge date in your diary for such a long time, and then it comes and like nothing really happens. You just sort of wake up and you're like, huh, okay then.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. My family will ask, I think at one point they finally did ask me, they were like, so, okay, it's for launch day, like, but what do you actually do for that? I'm like, well, I kind of did all the work already.
Exactly. I celebrated this book when I submitted it for the first time. Like, I haven't looked at this one in months.
Fair. But now, before we get too deep in, would you mind telling us a little bit about it, for those who maybe have never heard of it before?
Yes, I would absolutely love to. So Uncharmed is the story of Annie Wildwood, who is the absolute perfect witch. She is practically perfect in every which way, kind of the Mary Poppins of the magical world, I like to think of her.
Yeah.
And her whole life is perfectly curated, everything's neat and tidy. She exists in this like glittering pink haze of perfection. She runs the most beautiful bakery in London. And on paper, it looks as though she's kind of absolutely nailing everything and she's doing exactly what she should be doing. But then, unexpectedly, her coven tasks her with mentoring a troubled teenage witch who's just come into her power and is struggling to keep things under wraps. So, of course, Annie, being a total perfectionist and a people pleaser, she can't say no to this, even though it's about to turn her life completely upside down. So, Annie and this girl, Maeve, are sent off to kind of nurture her powers and see what they can come up with her magic. They're sent off to this very isolated cottage. And it soon becomes very clear that they could not be more different. They completely butt heads. They can't see from each other's perspectives. They are complete polar opposites. And then everything is kind of completely thrown into chaos, particularly when the owner of the cottage turns up unexpectedly. But Annie kind of soon finds an unexpected bond with the pair of them. And this kind of new life that she's stumbled into suddenly makes her question why, if she was doing everything so right in the first place in her normal life, then why does it feel so wrong compared to this new little bubble that she's kind of found for herself? And that's when she kind of starts to question everything that she's ever known and what it is that she really wants from life and what her kind of most authentic magic might actually be.
I love that. And we were talking before we began recording about how relatable her journey is.
Yeah, that is really
In
lovely
some
to
ways.
hear. I think it seems to be a common theme with this one that a lot of early readers have said to me is that they feel personally attacked.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and actually, I had even written it down to ask you, like, because the book starts off, we have this really kind of lovely reflection about little treats, right? And how we as people, as you know, the reader, we use these in our daily life. Like, okay, if I get all my tasks done, then I'll get a cookie at the end of it, right? Or I'll get myself a coffee, which I think a lot of us do, and in a physical sense is very fun and kind of cozy. But Annie is also like constantly doing this to herself and her thoughts, like constantly. So I just wanted to ask, like, how was it for you writing a character who is like checking in on herself all the time this way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that Annie is like a chronic overthinker because all she ever wants to do is make sure that she's being perceived as she intends to be perceived and that she's making everyone around her as happy as she possibly can and meeting these expectations that not only they set but that she also places on herself. So she's constantly second guessing every kind of second thing that she does. You know, every move she makes, she's wondering if she's made the right decision. And that is something that I definitely relate to hugely. I think I'm getting a little bit better with it as I'm getting older. But through my 20s especially, it felt like every move I made, I was kind of, yeah, trying to imagine how that was going to be perceived and if that was the right decision kind of from the outside, rather than looking at whether that would be the right one on the inside for me. So when I started writing this book, it became quite clear that that was kind of the journey that I wanted to take Annie on. And yeah, the little treat aspect of it tied in so nicely with her being kind of sugar and spice and a baker and all the little sweet treats that I wanted to write into the story. It felt like a good little metaphor for magic to have right at the beginning of the book.
Absolutely. I apologize. A total side note, but my cat is behind me meowing a lot.
You're talking to the right girl. Every time I do a podcast, my cat appears uninvited. So it will almost certainly happen at some point for me too.
All right, good. Well, I also have a small tortoise who lives like in a open air wooden box next to my desk. So he's
That is
usually the
so
one who's,
magical.
like,
I love that.
but usually he's the one who's like scratching, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna be able to hear that. But today it's the cat, so
I'll take them both. Don't worry about it.
all right, good. No, but so I love that answer, and I think that you have kind of answered my next question, which was like we also end the book with a moment of appreciation and it could be considered like this really small moment, but it doesn't have that kind of bargaining aspect to it, right? Of like, okay, I did all the things, so now I get to have this. It's just like, this is, and it's nice.
Yeah, you're totally right. Like the pace of her life changes so completely that rather than it being this kind of every tiny movement under the microscope, it's a much kind of more zoomed out image that wraps the book up. It's the kind of the full picture that she's created for herself that has such a more kind of gentle and comforting feel to it than the hustle and bustle that she starts with, which I think is a nice mirror for the journey that she goes on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now, did you know when you started out that that was where we're going to end up? Like, was that very intentional, or did you kind of discover it on the way?
I think sort of in the back of my mind, I anticipated that that was the way it was going to go, because with any kind of cozy fantasy, it's kind of the bargain that you're making is like you as a reader are expecting that kind of really comforting final note that feels like you're being wrapped up in a blanket. I think that's such a core part of cozy fantasy, isn't it? So you can pretty much guarantee that there's going to be a happy ending waiting on that last page. But I just, as a writer, I am not really much of a planner at all. I have a bit of a chaotic approach to writing, and I quite like to just see kind of where it goes and what the characters want to do, kind of thing. I like to go into it not really knowing too much, which probably isn't the most productive way of writing a book, but it's quite a fun way of doing it, and just kind of letting the characters make the decisions for themselves as we go.
No, absolutely, absolutely. It definitely works.
Oh, thank you. I'm not sure my editor would say the same, but it's nice to hear.
It keeps them in business, right?
Exactly, it sure does.
Well, and on that note, Maeve is just a lot of fun as a character in her own right, but also like in the way that, like, right from the moment when Annie and Maeve meet, we get to start to see Annie like second guessing her approach to the world, like right off the bat. And they have such a cool bond too. I really appreciated that even though they were opposites in many ways, they also have common ground right from the start as well, like brownies, right? Appropriately.
Yes, of course.
But I appreciated that it wasn't, just like all fighting all the time or anything like that. It was a very cozy bond. So where did your inspiration for Maeve and for their dynamic come from?
That was one of the things that I kind of didn't have too much kind of advanced planning in regards to, really. I knew that I wanted to have that kind of opposites attract quality to them, and for the whole trio really that are in the cottage together when Hal is introduced as well, who's the warlock who owns the cottage. I loved the idea that these three characters would have never quite met anybody like those other two characters before, and all three of them being like a really different dynamic, really. But Maeve in particular, I always knew it was going to be like a 15-year-old girl kind of thing. So I just kind of wrote the girl that I wish that I had been when I was 15, that was kind of, sure of herself and prioritizing herself and embracing the things that she loves and not being ashamed of them. And I don't know, I think, 15, 18 years when I was 15, there was a lot of, you shouldn't show what you love. It's embarrassing. It's cringy. Like, there was so much pressure in kind of, fitting into boxes. And I was definitely guilty of trying to fit myself into those boxes. And I look back now and I think, oh, you should have been loud and proud about the things that you loved and really embraced them and shown them off and been proud of those. And I love that quality in Maeve, is that she's unapologetically herself all the time.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I really kind of drew that out of her, and that's a big thing that Annie learns from her, I think. And just as I started to get to know them and I was writing them more and more, they definitely have a little bit of like a Gilmore Girls dynamic to them, I think. Maybe slightly reversed even in their roles, but that slightly kind of chaotic opposites slight mum and daughter energy to them. It's definitely a little bit Gilmore Girls inspired, I think.
That's a lot of fun. And I really appreciate what I'm hearing, like the fact that Annie is dealing with, her overthinking and things like that, and things that you were saying you have dealt with as an adult, and then putting her in, literally in the same cabin with a, the teenager that you wished you were, like, that it's a very personal element to their journeys. I think both of them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a theme that I just love to write. I mean, there's an element of that in my other book, Rewitched, as well. She gets to kind of communicate with her younger self in that book. And yeah, I think that will be a recurring theme to me forever. That kind of the kind of cross point between like being a grown up and being a woman, and how your own girlhood kind of comes into that, and how you almost go through like a rebirth with it. I think when you get to a certain point in life, you start to embrace that younger self within you and celebrate her a bit more than you ever did when you were existing in that age. I think that's such like a magical concept, and it fits in so nicely with witchcraft and cozy fantasy I think that'll be something I explore in probably every book I ever write.
Well, it's really special. It's really sweet. I think that's really neat. I have a series where I've done something a little similar, but where it's just like more so than my other series. It's the type of book that I would have wanted to read as a kid, right? And it's amazing fun to write because of the magic and the characters and all that, but there's something also very healing about it, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with cozy fantasy in particular, there is quite a healing element to it. There's something about writing the kind of message that you need to take comfort from. And yeah, that kind of like speaking to girlhood and embracing your younger self, and kind of telling her the things that she needed to hear at that point in life. There is something really kind of cathartic and healing about that, for sure.
Absolutely. And you've mentioned a couple times now that like this is definitely one of the strengths of cozy fantasy, right? I love this genre.
I love that that's the face that everybody pulls when they talk about cozy fantasy. I'm like, oh, I fell into the right genre, because everybody just kind of like squeezes themselves in a big hug.
Well, yeah, and kind of to go back to what you were saying, so Rewitched was the first book that you had finished and then sought publication for, and is also cozy fantasy. So, like, was that for a reason? Like, had you written other genres and then this is the one that stuck, or
But yeah,
called to you? Like,
it really just kind of stole every brain cell that was in my head. I had this very, very early seed of an idea way back in 2020 about a witch having to prove that she was worthy of keeping her magic that might be taken from her. That was the first like very early idea that I had, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and I've never had a book idea like that, which has literally stolen my attention so completely. So I had a bit of a like funny feeling quite early on that like, oh, I think this is the one. Like, I think this is the one that's going to keep my bum on my seat at my keyboard and make me write to the end of this book. And I think it was so reflective of how I was feeling at the time of writing as well, that there was something in the process of doing that again was just like a really healing experience, which was probably what made it so enticing to write and so motivating to write. Kind of seeing those characters through to the other side is such a kind of comforting feeling as an author. So yeah, that was the one that got me to write the end. Finally.
Right. Well, and kind of more, so dipping for a minute more onto the fantasy side of things, right? With Annie and Maeve, we get a peek into this world of like, there's a lot of spells, there's a lot of kind of structure to society, right? There's like covens and there's oversight. do you have like a list somewhere with every spell on it? Like, how do you approach this as an author?
So that is something that I think about on a daily basis. As I need to do that. I need to make myself like a guidebook, a handbook of this magic system, because coming to write the second one, I was obviously suddenly so aware that I had a magic system that had to match up, because they exist in the same universe. Annie in Uncharmed is part of the same coven as Belle in Rewitched. So it's the exact same magic system, the exact same coven. I had to make sure that they paired up, identically.
Yeah.
And every day since, I thought, wow, I really need to make myself a guidebook. I need to make my own grimoire to like refer to while I'm writing.
In that case, where does the inspiration for their magic come from? Like, or is it like you're writing along and you're like, this would be a cool thing for them to be able to do? Or
Yeah, it's pretty much that. I kind of always say that my magic system is like no thought, just vibes. It tends to be like there's very little sort of fixed structure to it. And my whole approach to writing these books was very much from the beginning 90s witch inspired, is how I like to frame it. Like the witches that I grew up with, primarily like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and the way that she would just kind of point and sparkles would appear and something great would happen. That was like the kind of fun, straightforward, simple approach that I knew I wanted to take. And that's exactly how I approach it. They're kind of like very down to earth, relatable characters that live in the non-witchy world. So it was just like a fun experiment of thinking, well, what would I use that for? In the same way that they just exist in London in their day jobs. Like, what would I use that kind of point and shoot magic for? And it's always things like drying my hair instantly after washing it, or like keeping my cup of coffee reheated after I've left it for 3 hours. Like just like really handy spells like that are my favorite thing to try and come up with.
more on the small comforts, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very
Yeah. And it kind of does expand a little bit as the stories go on. There is more complex magic involved, which is also really fun to think about. But I do love thinking about that really small scale, domestic kind of magic that everybody just kind of, I wish I could do that.
Absolutely. And I think it goes a long way for the reader too, because like we were saying with Annie, like it's very relatable, right? Like, oh yeah, in my day-to-day life, that is what I want. In my day-to-day life, maybe I'm not, like taking down an evil wizard or whatever.
Exactly.
But I do have wet hair.
Exactly. Think how much more you would get done if you could have an instant blow dry. It would be amazing.
Definitely. No, we've touched a little bit here and there on Rewitched, and I know, so we started off with Uncharmed, and you gave us a summary of that. Do you want to just highlight Rewitched really quick too, since it is in the same
sure.
world?
I would love to. Yeah. So Rewitched is my first book. It's actually technically set after Uncharmed. Uncharmed is technically first in the timeline, but you can read either in any order, really. But Rewitched is the story of Belle Blackthorn, who works in a bookshop, and she is completely burnt out. After going through kind of everything that you go through in your 20s, the stresses of life, and battling a toxic boss at the bookshop now, she is just, completely burnt out and has really neglected her magic along the way. And the day before her 30th birthday, she receives a letter from her coven very unexpectedly to let her know that it's time to face a trial, which will decide once and for all whether she is worthy of keeping that magic or whether it will be taken from her for good if she hasn't been using it to the best of her abilities. So she suddenly has to come face to face with the reality of having neglected that magic, and she will basically need all the help she can get in the fight to try and keep it. And the women in her life come in to help, and there's a very mysterious mentor who gets involved, and then obviously there's also an annoying, handsome watchman who comes in from the coven to protect her. So where Uncharmed is kind of about perfectionism and people pleasing, Rewitched is more about rediscovering the power of your potential as you get a little bit older. And how it can feel as though that flame has sort of faded thanks to life getting in the way, and how it's never too late to kind of reignite that for yourself.
Right, yeah. And especially both of them with the help of the people around you, right? This idea of
Absolutely.
your friends, your community coming together. They both have that, yeah, which is, of course, a big part of cozy genres, too. I, is that obviously we've talked a lot about kind of internal journeys. Do you think about kind of the community aspect too? Like, do you enjoy coming up with the
Oh,
characters and
absolutely.
everything?
I think it's one of my favorite aspects of writing. Like, obviously, I love my main girls more than anything, but there is something so fun about creating those slightly wacky side characters that can just pop up here and there and either be completely crazy or super sarcastic and slightly horrible or absolutely ridiculous. Like, you can really take them to their extremes. And yeah, it's what that they're one of my favorite elements to write, actually, is creating those side characters, whether I want them to be a little tribute to someone in my own life or whether they're just this kind of slightly strange figure who's plaguing me all the time and I need to put them in a story. Yeah, I love kind of like knitting that full community together.
That's awesome. Do you have like a particular favorite that stands out from either book?
There's a character in Rewitched called Artorias, who I have a particular soft spot for. I'll try and keep it spoiler free, but he is, yeah, such a fun one to write, and yeah, I think he's very endearing. So yeah, I definitely have a special place for him.
Aw. Okay. Do you plan to continue writing in this world, especially now that you have all of your other characters and everybody in it?
Yeah, I mean, in my absolute wildest dreams, I would just absolutely love to. There is nothing I love more than when I have an empty day and I can just disappear off into this little witchy universe and see who else pops up and see what more magic is waiting to be discovered. So, yeah, I would absolutely love to explore it more. And fingers crossed. Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Fair enough. Okay, this is another one that I ask everybody. If you could go back to the beginning and talk to yourself when you were just starting out, what advice would you give to yourself?
Oh, that's a really good question. Now I feel like I'm attacking myself. Like this is like a full therapy session. I think, like nice and neatly, it's actually pretty on theme with Uncharmed. I think in that I wish I'd learnt sooner that it's impossible to create something perfect. And especially at the very beginning, you know, when you've got this really kind of rough, unconfirmed idea for a story, you can't look at a blank page and expect the perfect chapter to appear. Like it just doesn't work that way. And the longer you wait for that to happen and the more you tell yourself that has to happen, the longer you're putting off, you know, just getting started and seeing what could happen and allowing yourself to get lost and allowing yourself to, you know, leave that little bit of room for magic and see what might happen. You have to be so open and ready to just sort of making a bit of a mess, and then you can polish it up later down the line. That's definitely a new skill that I've never really embraced before, and it's, you know, it's so rewarding much later down the line, but you do have to be ready for those early drafts to be absolutely terrible. And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, yeah, the ability to kind of remove some of the pressure from yourself, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
my
hard
husband
lesson,
will
but it's an important one.
yeah, no, this reminded me, my husband will sometimes say, like, the stress is what's holding me together. You know, like the pressure is what's
So
keeping
true.
me functioning. And it's like,
That's so true.
yeah.
If I dare to relax, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. But yeah, being able to kind of like, oh, like take a breath and just kind of embrace the messiness, as you were saying. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
really
Exactly.
great piece of advice.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Final question. What is one big win that you've had in the past week? Big or small win, actually.
Ooh, I can hear my cat on the approach. She is going to make an appearance at any moment. I guess today is my quite big win of the week because it's publication day, so it's kind of perfect
Yeah.
timing for that question.
Really? I know. As I was speaking it, I was like, well, duh.
Yeah, I was trying to
It's
think of a
launch
more like
day.
niche, fun, quirky win, but I guess publishing my second book has to probably take the biscuit for that one,
Yeah,
I think.
that's a big one. Are you doing anything to celebrate?
I'm not really tonight, but my UK publishing day is Thursday, and I'm going out with my publishing team
Oh.
for a big bowl of pasta to celebrate on Thursday. And my tour, my UK tour starts tomorrow, so that's kind of like kicking
Oh
everything
man.
off in style. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a week of celebration, which is really lovely.
There you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not just celebrating the one day, but
It's
having
like a big
many things
birthday,
to
isn't it? You have
celebrate.
to drag it out
Yeah,
as much as you possibly can.
exactly, exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I've had the nicest time. I love our matching headphones are like very
Yeah.
coordinated together. It's been so lovely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, yeah. And I will put all of your links and everything in the show notes so listeners can go find those. Yeah, once again, congratulations
Thank
on your
you.
release date. Good luck with the tour. And listeners, I will talk to you next time. Cozy Alchemy is brought to you by Authors on the Air, and our theme music is by Cyberwave Orchestra. For everything else, blame Elle. You can find her online at lhartford.com.